appreciate, just thank everyone. Like, I truly appreciate everyone's support in all of it. Like, it means so much to me. It gave me a lot of strength when I was in there.
For the first time since posting bail, we're hearing from attempted murder suspect and former UFC champion Cain Velasquez. He describes how he passed the 8 months behind bars. We hear from celebrity lawyer Mitra Ahouraian about treatment of high-profile inmates. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Gillespie.
My mind ran both sides of it, like the bad side and the good side. But it's a thing that we always have to have faith. It doesn't matter what position we're in, where we're at. Like, we always got to look for like the best case scenario for us.
For the first time since his release from jail, we're hearing from former UFC heavyweight champion Cain Velasquez. Velasquez, who posted a $1 million bail last month, is charged with attempted murder. It's a complicated story, though, with many twists and turns, but it starts with the alleged sexual assault of Velasquez's 4-year-old son. Prosecutors say Harry Goldberg sexually assaulted Velasquez's son hundreds of times at Goldberg's family-owned daycare. In what prosecutors are calling vigilantism, Velasquez attempted to shoot Goldberg, but accidentally hit his stepfather instead, Paul Bender. This came after a 100-mile-per-hour chase along the 101 in San Jose. Velasquez then spent 8 months in jail, but his bail was granted on November 8th. He told reporters on the scene he felt blessed.
How's it feel to be out?
Appreciate it, man. Oh, I just feel blessed, ready to go home, be with the loved ones.
So for the first time since then, Velasquez is speaking out, and this time on the Keeping It 100 podcast with former pro wrestler Conan.
So they had me in protective custody.
Right.
It was very low key. Only a few people that I was able to like kind of hang out with, and I guess the good thing about it is you got a lot of alone time with yourself, and the bad thing about it was you got a lot of alone time with yourself.
Now, joining us today to break down that interview is celebrity lawyer Mitra Ahouraian. Thank you so much for joining us, Mitra.
My pleasure. Always fun to be here.
Great. Okay, so let's begin with the obvious, though. Velasquez is a high-profile inmate who is placed in protective custody. So what does that exactly mean? How is it decided who goes where on the inside?
Typically, when that happens, it's because, the judge or the guards feel like he may be at risk of being harmed. It's hard to sort of imagine that with a wrestler, right? So with Velasquez, it's kind of hard to imagine that, somebody might, jump him or, perhaps for clout. But his, him being in general population does carry the risk of some commotion happening, of the guards having to deal with something they wouldn't normally have to deal with. And so that's typically the reason why somebody who's a celebrity and who's high profile might be removed from general population.
So in that interview, Velasquez commented about how a lot of his time was spent alone as there were like few people in protective custody. But is that almost a punishment for these high-profile celebrities or inmates to be isolated from the rest of that general prison population?
And that's an interesting point because, if you hear sort of people talking about celebrities, you say, oh, they got special treatment. They didn't have to go through the hardships that, other inmates have to go through. They're treated special. And you make a really interesting point. It's not necessarily a good thing to be in confinement. That has its own special set of, torturous environments and outcomes. Not everyone could sit with themselves for long periods of time, and so it's not necessarily better treatment. They do a lot to try and make things consistent in terms of food and the type of access they have to entertainment. None of that is necessarily specialized to accommodate a celebrity. But, if you look at, let's go back to a really obvious example, Lindsay Lohan, right? We know that she served some time, very short period of time, 14 days, but, she was in solitary basically. And that was, for her protection. A lot of the women were people who had committed murder. and had more serious crimes. And she had a DUI and, shoplifting and a few other things that were nonviolent. And so that separation sort of made sense. But the way she describes it is really torture, is really the fact that, like, you are alone with yourself for long periods of time. And most people cannot handle that. People have committed suicide in situations like that. And so, you raise an interesting point. It is something that you have to think about with this, in terms of this parallel of how are regular people treated and how are celebrities treated. It's not necessarily better.
Right. Yeah. Actually, Velasquez in the interview, he talked about how the best part was he could spend some time alone. And then also the worst part, he has to spend a lot of time alone. He actually mentioned that there was only about 3 hours a day of free time for him. Is that something that's normal across the board or a celebrity thing here?
Physical training, yeah, like you would try to definitely do some stuff. We got out only 3 hours a day, and I would, like, for my workout, I would hit like stairs. There were stairs there, so I would just like run stairs for like an hour straight.
No, definitely. I mean, the amount of time that you have is allocated, right? So they make sure that sort of things that are humane, like getting sunlight, like getting out, getting physical exercise, those types of things, that that people are, really need to survive. Those things are allowed, and there are restrictions on that, and there are time restrictions on it, and physical restrictions on where they can go and what they can do in that time period. But that's not something that's unusual for anyone, any inmate to have.
So, yeah, you kind of touched on it a bit, but Velasquez, especially as this UFC wrestler, he mentioned he continued to train while he was in jail. He said he actually like ran stairs while he was there. That was his big way to kind of stay in shape. But not long after he was released, he was actually allowed to leave California for the Lucha Libre wrestling event. It was in Arizona. So, do you have any idea why he was able to leave the state? Could it have anything to do with that celebrity status of his?
Yeah, that was some good lawyering on Mark Garagos's part, because that is not the usual thing that happens. But the argument is this is his livelihood. This is how he makes money, and innocent until proven guilty, right? So we have to make sure that there is, that we are protecting him. Sorry, that we're protecting the population from somebody who possibly attempted to kill someone. But at the same time, do we want to take away everything? So my argument would just be that this is his livelihood, and he has to, let's let him do this one fight. And here are all the ways that we're going to make sure that he doesn't go anywhere else, that that he doesn't leave the ring, all of these things. And he's in a unique position to be able to say, hey, judge, I'm going to pay for all of this. I'm going to pay for as many people that you want there to make sure I don't go anywhere. I'm going to pay for, flying there, all the people that you want to necessarily fly there, however that may look. And then perhaps some additional penalties, if anything, if there's any deviation from that. So that's something that would be negotiated. That's not something I've seen before. So unique circumstances require, unique unique resolutions.
Yeah, and everything we've really talked about so far is Velasquez being held in jail pre-trial before anything like that. So let's say this does go to trial. If he is convicted, he'd then be sent to prison. What could that look like? Would it be a similar sort of situation for a celebrity to be held in prison long term?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times when we hear of celebrities, we hear of them eventually going under house arrest, which is sort of where he is right now while he's awaiting his trial. But it's there's going to be a plea. We don't know what that plea is going to be. And so, depending on the amount of time that he could potentially serve if he is found guilty, or whether there's a plea, I think part of that negotiation is certainly going to be something like, perhaps a period of time in prison, and then at some point with good behavior, perhaps, house arrest. And then from there, with good behavior, parole, probation, sort of going through all these phases of transitioning out of the punishment system.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, too. But so far, a trial date has not yet been set for Velasquez. But we are continuing to follow this story to bring the latest developments. So if a trial date is set, we'll definitely bring it your way. Mitra, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thanks, everyone. You can watch and listen to Law&Crime's Sidebar podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever else you get your podcasts. I'll see you next time.